All right, good evening, everyone, and I welcome you all to the Founder Fundamentals session on equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace, hosted by Y Space and the Markham Small Business Center. I'm Alina, and I'm the Student and Community Engagement Coordinator at Y Space, and I will be your moderator for tonight. I would like to begin with acknowledgement of the land. And since we're meeting today on a virtual platform and not gathered in the same space, I recognize that this land acknowledgement might not be for the territory that you're currently on. And if this is the case, please take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory you're on and the current treaty holders. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto has been caretaken by the Nushnawik Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This treaty is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. All right, so this is the last session of the 12-week-long Founder Fundamentals. So I do want to take a moment to tell all of you that even though the Founder Fundamental program is coming to an end, there are many resources and services that YSpace offers that you can still take advantage of. As you already know, YSpace is York University's entrepreneurship hub, and it consists of several incubator and accelerator programs that are designed specifically to support entrepreneurs from different sectors. We have two major portfolios, the technology and the food and beverage portfolio. Having said that, we also support community entrepreneurs through our community programming, and we run two diverse streams, the ELA program that supports women-led businesses and Black Entrepreneurship Alliance for Black-led businesses. Some of our staple programs include the Technology Accelerator Program, the Food Accelerator Program, the Venture Catalyst, and the Founder Fundamental Series. With the Founder Fundamental Series, I do want to let you know that we run this program twice in a year, and we change up the kind of topics that we offer. So please keep a lookout for the session that we'll be hosting in September for some new topics and new facilitators. With this particular session, I do want to remind everyone that those of you who attended 9 out of 11 sessions will receive a YSpace York University Certificate of Recognition that I will be emailing to you. If you are eligible for it, I will be emailing it to you in 2 weeks' time from today. And in the meanwhile, if you need any help, you want to have like an idea consultation, I will share my email in the chat function as well. Before we begin, I do want to give a few shout outs to all those who are working behind this series to make this a possibility. In particular, I would like to thank Nafis Ahmed, the entrepreneurship manager at YSpace, who has helped shape up the series and source facilitators for the session. So thank you so much, Nafis. And I would like to extend our special gratitude to our partners, the Markham Small Business Center, for providing the support with the series. And I'd like to welcome Wendy on screen with me to say a few words.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our last session. I'm Wendy from the city of Markham. Our department is Markham Small Business Center. So our goal is helping small businesses to grow. And currently we have 2 grants for the small businesses, and it is all about digital transformation and digital marketing. So respectively, there are like $2,500 and another one is $2,400. So if you are interested, please drop a message, or I will leave my contact info here. So just reach me after this session. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Wendy. Now, without any delays, we're going to get started with our evening, but very quickly, some housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics muted during the session. However, fully utilize the chat function to share your comments, share your questions, your thoughts. We would love for this session to be extremely interactive, and we've planned activities and breakout rooms for you. So please engage with us and fully utilize all the resources and knowledge that will be shared with you tonight. Now, without any further delay, I would like to open the stage for our wonderful speaker, Cheryl Johnson, who is the founder of Strategic Insight and Inclusive Marketing, a Toronto-based consulting firm founded in 2016. As an award-winning and accomplished business leader, Cheryl has created value, revenue, and profit for global blue-chip brands, typically in environments that were initially not diverse, not inclusive, and not equitable. Through strategic insight and inclusive marketing, Cheryl leverages her passion and expertise to help organizations reflect, engage, and include the diverse audience they serve. As Interim Vice President of Brand Strategy and Communication, Cheryl is proud to have served as the chair of the CEO IDEA, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility Task Force at Kids Health Phone, a national non-for-profit youth mental health agency, where she brings expertise to the critical work of inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and belonging, aspiring to demonstrate it as the core business driver. Cheryl, it is an absolute pleasure having you here to facilitate this workshop, and I flip the mic over to you to begin the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alina, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. You know what, honestly, I give kudos to all of you for joining us on the first really wonderful, nice day of 2023. So thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping that you'll get a lot out of today's session. As Alina mentioned, it is very interactive, so we will have lots of breakout groups. And part of having the breakout groups is really to have conversation. As much as I can provide definitions of terms, the way that we really learn and understand and grow in the space of equity, inclusion, and diversity is through conversation. So with that said, this is a facilitated session to build shared awareness and understanding of the concepts of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Equity, going beyond equality to ensure opportunities and resources are shaped to create equal and fair outcomes. Inclusion, not only do we feel safe to share our thoughts and ideas beyond a seat at the table, to voices having weight towards better outcomes. And if we get equity and inclusion right, diversity will happen. So when we are equitable and demonstrate inclusion, we invite and welcome diversity. Indigenous, Black, people of diversity, people of color will seek out those organizations. And with that, I am going to share my screen, and please do use the chat functions. Alina will be monitoring. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to share and ask along the way. All right. So there we go. All right. Did everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. Awesome. All right. Let's dig right in. So today's session is about 60 to 70 minutes long. We're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping and some terminology, and not to worry, you don't have to write down all the terminology, all the definitions. I will actually provide that at the end and give that to Alina, and Alina will be able to send that out. Okay, so not to worry. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about equity, equality, justice, and inequality. We're going to spend some time with a few videos on stereotyping and gender roles revised. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time on privilege and understanding what privilege actually means. It may not mean what you think it does. And lastly, I'll go through some of the tools that we went through in our session today. Now, the reason why I go into housekeeping is let's talk about what psychological safety actually means in the context of this session. We want to promote psychological safety in these sessions. We want to practice active and empathetic listening and sharing. We want to challenge the idea, not the person. Be both teachers and learners. Take space and make space. Stories stay, lessons leave. Use I statements, one microphone, and I do ask you to be here now. From a community norms perspective, we want to set, because we're in this together, this can be a very heavy topic. So we want to level set expectations, and we want to challenge ourselves to embrace discomfort, trust intent, and name impact. Be honest with ourselves and others, acknowledge judgments and assumptions, including your own, and accept that things may remain unresolved. We may not feel a sense of closure in this discussion today. This really is just an introduction, and I promise you, each and every page I go through today could be a 4-month course. So this is really just an introduction and driving some level of awareness in our conversation today, but there will be time for questions at the end. All right. With that said, I'm going to carry on. And again, if there are any questions, please do use the chat function. So let's talk a little bit about awareness, first and foremost. Becoming self-aware. Did anybody have a chance to try that IAT test from the link that was sent last week? No, not everybody did. I do encourage you to try and log on. You don't have to leave any information there. It is a website from Harvard University, and it has a number of different tests, sociological tests. And at the end of the day, it really is a wonderful mirror to demonstrate the fact that we are all impacted by our unconscious bias. Only the degree to which we are influenced and shaped by our environment will these answers show up on these types of little polls, of these little quizzes. And it's really quite enlightening. So I do encourage you at some point in time, it's free, it's no cost, but I found it absolutely enlightening, and I think it might surprise you. For today's session, if we take away nothing else today, but our awareness of our own unconscious biases, this will continue your journey to and through the EID space. Now, let's get to some terminology. And again, I'm not going to read all of this, and this will be provided at the end, and it will also be sent to you. Psychological safety, a shared belief that team members are safe for interpersonal, risk-taking, and personal expression. So in a nutshell, basically, as we talked about psychological safety for this session, it really is about being able to allow individuals to show up as themselves, being able to share their perspectives and not feel that they're at risk, personal risk, or their job is at risk for sharing their opinions. That is psychological safety. Stereotypes, we've heard of stereotypes. This is not new. But what we want to remind ourselves is that stereotypes are arbitrary. They're arbitrary social value attached to observable traits used to categorize. Race. Race is a social construct. It is not culture. It is not ethnicity. It is a social construct. Ethnicity. Ethnicity is cultural markers and association, not with physical appearance. Bias and prejudice, we're going to talk a lot about that in today's session. Unconscious bias, we've already touched on that. Privilege, we're going to go through a session and a breakout. We're going to talk about privilege. And microaggressions. So we're going to talk a little bit about that by the time we get to the end of our terminology. But let's focus right now on diversity and inclusion. The two words tend to go together. You tend to hear DE and I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or diversity and inclusion. They tend to come together, but they're not the same. Diversity is not inclusion, and inclusion is not diversity. Is everybody clear on that? Diversity is not inclusion, and inclusion is not diversity. So diversity is basically what you can see. So when you say we're a very diverse team, well, we have people that look different. We have people that dress different. We have people that maybe come from other countries. We have people that speak other languages. That's a level of diversity. Diversity also includes people who think differently, people who acquire information differently. When we think about neurodiversity, that is also a form of diversity. Inclusion is how well the contributions, presence, and perspectives of different groups of people are valued and integrated into an environment. I can tell you that I have worked for some very large organizations, whether it be Kraft, whether it be Intuit, whether it be Kellogg's, Kids Help Phone, Manulife. Diverse organizations, many were not inclusive. So from an outsider, you look at the executive team and wow, we've got people that look very different. So there's diversity, check mark. But where organizations lose out and where teams lose out is creating a sense of inclusion. Because what can happen in organizations is that they hire people that look different, but think exactly the same as the organization. So if you have somebody that comes from a different country or that speaks a different language, but they think exactly like the core of that organization, they're actually not bringing diversity at all. So I want us all to really take away that diversity and inclusion are not the same thing. If you have inclusion, and if your organization is recognized as an inclusive organization, I promise you, you will attract diversity. You will not need to go through HR and say, I need to find people that look different, and it will naturally occur. Now, with that said, there's still a lot of work that organizations need to do to ensure that inclusion happens. And it's not just organizations, it's teams, it's groups, it's your own friends. Do all your friends look like you? Is your social circle diverse? Do you include different perspectives even in your own social circle? So one of the things that I want everybody to take away is, again, awareness for the fact that if I have my social circle, that tends to be my family, that tends to be my friends, my neighbors, and they all look like me, or they all have the same perspectives, am I even being inclusive as an individual? Am I even ensuring that I'm hearing and listening from other perspectives, from other cultures, from other ethnicities? Ask that question of yourself, and then ask that of those that you work with or that you play with, quite frankly. Okay. So we're going to go into our first breakout, and this is going to be a fun one. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but I think this is going to be a ton of fun because we are going to ask you, out of these 4 pictures, and many of you may have seen this before, don't spoil it for everyone else, but for each one of these boxes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, label box 1, is it justice, equity, equality, or inequality? Label box 2, box 3, and box 4. Okay. So just do your own labeling as a team, as a breakout. And then when you come back, place your answers into the chat, and then we'll have a discussion about it. We have 10 minutes here.
All right, perfect. So I'm just going to stop recording during the breakout sessions, and I'm going to open the breakout. Perfect. Welcome back, everyone.
Terrific. All right. So let's reveal. How did everybody think they did? Good? Yeah? Okay, let's see. So what did everybody think number one was? Justice, equity, equality, or inequality. Inequality. Why was this inequality? Unequal access to opportunities. So the opportunities are the apples, and the bent tree, as you can see, the two little children, one child does not have the equal access to those apples. There's a lot of apples on one side, and the tree is bent on one side. So that's inequality. What about number two? They both have ladders. Equality. Evenly distributed tools and assistance. Are the opportunities better for the person on the right? They both have the same size ladders. So even with equality, giving everybody the same tools, the outcome is the same. Opportunities are not evenly distributed. Does everybody understand that? So when people say equality, that's one step. But what we really want is equity. So as you can see there, the young person on the right now has the right size ladder. However, again, the opportunities are not the same because the apples are still growing on one side. So although they now have the appropriate tools, the outcomes are not quite what we want them to be. That's why, by process of elimination, the last one is justice. Justice is about fixing the system to offer equal access to both tools and opportunities. Okay. Any questions on that at all? I really like these images because it kind of sticks in your head a little bit. And I have in our tools and resources other examples like this, but other graphics that really help to solidify the difference between equity and equality. That's the one that people get a little bit confused. If we have equality, do we have equity? If we have equity, do we have equality? Not necessarily. And in both cases, we don't have justice. So what we want, when we think about the bent tree could be an example of generational wealth. The bent tree could also be, again, something that has nothing to do with you. So the country or city where you were raised, that could be the bent tree. Socioeconomic disparities, that again could be the bent tree. And when you think about the opportunities, the apples, housing in a good neighborhood, access to financial support, enrollment in certain schools, and promotions. So you can see the importance here of justice, equity, equality, and the impact of inequality. When that tree is bent to one side and all the apples are on one side, generational wealth might get you the promotion, might get you that house, might get you that loan. It's bent towards one side. Okay? Any questions on that at all? All right, so now I have a bit of a different question to ask everyone. While you were in your breakouts, how inclusive were your breakout groups? I didn't ask you to, before you went into the breakout groups, I didn't ask you to pay attention to this, but I want you to, again, this is about awareness. So were your breakout groups inclusive? Did we resolve conflicts effectively? Were we willing to help each other as we were trying to think through those definitions? Were we standing up for each other? When somebody had a thought, did we support that? Did we give team members the benefit of the doubt if they had a different answer than we did? And were we watching out for things like dominance tactics? Do we observe any of that? Dominating the conversation, interrupting or cutting off others, or downplaying the value of others? So these are things that I just want us to always be aware of when we think about, are we being inclusive? So we just set out everybody into breakout rooms. Nobody knew one another, I don't believe. But how inclusive? So I want us to always think about, and again, this will be part of the tools and resources at the end, but I want us to always think about, are we being inclusive? Even if we're playing on a sports team, are we listening to everybody? Or are we only listening to the captain? Or are we only listening to the coach? Always making room for each other, supporting each other. That's what an inclusive environment looks like. Okay. All right. Exciting. We're going to go back out into breakouts. We had a breakout. We're going to go back into breakouts. We're going to spend about 15 minutes here. And we might spend a little less time because I think we don't have as many breakouts for today's session. But I'm going to start a video, and I'm going to ask you to observe the video, and then in the breakouts, we'll have some questions about the video. All right. And I just want, when I start the video, if I could see a few thumbs up, just to say that just to let me know that the audio and video is working as I'm hoping it will. Okay, so with that, I am going to
Hi there.
yes.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean, before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, like, well, where are your people from?
Well, my great grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean, but I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
I'm Shasina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
No, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Drop the moment to you. Sport. Double, toil and trouble. Mind the gap, beware Jack the Ripper. I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird?
Hi there.
All right. So what do we all think about that? Anybody ever experience anything like that? I love that video because it takes a topic that I think many of us have either experienced or have witnessed. And it, again, the intent here is just to be aware and to think. So in your breakouts, I'd like you to take a look at these 4 questions and discuss. What assumptions were made? What stereotypes were assumed? What offense intended? And have you encountered a situation like this? Okay. So if you can go up to your breakout rooms, Alina, if you can do your magic.
Yes,
And we will be back in, let's do this in 10 minutes.
perfect. Got it. Right. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. So, how are your discussions in your breakout rooms? Unmute yourself and just share anything that you talked about in your breakout rooms, any one of these questions. Let's share with one another. Does anybody want to go first?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, this is Penny.
Hi, Penny.
I think that in my break-off room, I had 2 people, but I didn't realize it at the very beginning. And luckily, a second person who identified himself as Polish, I think Slavomir, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, introduced himself, but before that happened, Hassan had started to talk to me and we were having a very good conversation. I wish I could have kept longer now because I wish I knew how to say his name properly. Slavomir. Somebody put his name on the screen in front of me. And then I found out he was there, but we had already, the 2 of us, Hassan and I, had begun a conversation that extended for a long time and left him out of it because I didn't know that he was there in the first place.
That's okay, Penny. I'm sure it wasn't intended. What were there any kind of key takeaways from the conversation you did have in terms of what assumptions were made or stereotypes assumed?
I personally explained the assumptions that I made as a teacher of ESL in Canada since 1969. So I'm getting on there and I've been doing it for ages and I'm still working on it. The stereotypes were assumed sometimes when you were a young teacher, you didn't have a stereotype because you hadn't worked with that particular culture. So there was never offense intended on either side, I think. And I always have a very soft part in my heart for wanting to help people learn English as a second language or third or fourth, but and I'm still working on it too. So
we all are.
These situations that you've shown us are very real. Maybe the first one was very exaggerated. It was like a movie instead of an actual situation, but this discussion is very well experienced from lots of people I know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Penny. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else? I have to share with you that what I thought really interesting was when she asked, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just American. I'm just a regular American." Isn't that interesting that, you know, basically the default is I'm just American. Sandra, I see your hand up.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi,
So yeah, I mean, a couple of people in our group were saying that they didn't find the video relatable because I
Mhm.
guess it was so exaggerated and they hadn't encountered that. But I had a little bit, you know, not exactly like that.
Mhm.
And one of the people in our group was saying, well, you know, if you are in that situation, why don't you just leave? Like these two people are runners. She shouldn't have to stay.
Mhm.
But I said, well, you know, when I've been in that kind of situation, it wasn't in my interest to just leave. You know,
Mhm.
I'm interviewing for a job or I'm, you know, meeting a client for the first time. I want the project. I don't want to leave. I'd like to steer the conversation elsewhere. And
Mhm.
I've also been in a taxi, you know, people asking me these kinds of questions. And I know if I start getting into that conversation, it might not go well.
Right.
So, you know, there's got to be a better way to handle it than just leave.
Mhm.
Oh, and the other idea someone in our group said was asking a question back. So instead of answering the question, ask, why are you asking me? I'm not sure that, you know, that's going to help either, but maybe it's better than leaving.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for sharing. I will share that I was born and raised here in Toronto. I don't know where everybody's in the general vicinity, but I was born here in Toronto. And growing up, I was probably asked every day, if not every other week. And as I became an adult, probably at least monthly, where are you from? The assumption is there's no way you can be from here. You're from somewhere else. Now, what are you really asking? Are you asking where I'm from? Or are you asking about my lineage? You're asking where my family's from? Are you asking where my people are from? Or are you asking me where I'm from? Because I couldn't possibly be Canadian. I couldn't possibly be from Toronto. That's really what I want everybody to kind of take away from this, is the fact that what is the default? I'll use another example in terms of what a default is. If you go onto Google and type in hair, just hair, what do you get? You'll get blonde hair, brunette hair, red hair, straight hair, pretty much Caucasian hair. If I want to see hair that looks like mine, I have to type in black hair. Well, why is the default long, straight, blonde, brunette, red? Why is that the default? If I go to Google again and I type in CEO or business director, what do I get? What assumptions are made? The objective of this particular video isn't so much the interaction and whether or not it's exaggerated to make a point. Where are you from is something that is asked of people who are anything, people of color every single day. There is zero assumption that you could be from right where you are. And when you ask somebody else, oh, I'm just Canadian. What does that mean? Are you Indigenous? Fantastic. Would love to have a conversation with you. Oh, no. My family's been here for years. Fantastic. So where's your family from? And let's have that conversation. So again, the objective of this video isn't, basically to get into an argument with somebody or to take offense, but to ask the question, what are you really asking? Because I love to tell people, where are you from? Oh, I was born just up the street here in St. Joseph's Healthcare Center. That's exactly where I was born. That's not what they were asking though. So the objective here, check your assumptions, check your stereotypes. If you're going to ask somebody a question, somebody of color, a question, check yourself as to whether or not you would ask that same question if the person looked like you. Would you ask the same question? If you would, there's no stereotype there involved at all. But if you're really asking, and I would also say, why are you asking? It's fine to ask. It's fine to have a conversation. I get people, you know, I say that my family is from Barbados. I'm not from Barbados, but I'll get people that say, oh, I love that street in Barbados. I love that beach. I love that. I'm like, that's wonderful. I don't know anything about that, but I can tell you where to go eat in Spadina. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions before we leave this one? We have one more video that I'm going to show talking about another type of stereotype, but this is a good conversation for us all to have, because I want us to all take away the fact that we all carry stereotypes with us. That's not right, wrong, or indifferent, but I would ask you to think about and be aware if you would ask that same question, if that person looked like you, if the person was of another gender, if that person was of another culture, would you ask that same question? And it's just about checking your stereotype, what you assume. Okay? All right. And just before we leave it, I'm just going to check to see any other thoughts or questions. Everybody just wants to get outside, huh? Before the in the nice weather. I don't blame you. I really don't. Okay. So moving on to, there is going to be another breakout session. This time, well, I'm actually not going to preface it. I'm just going to jump right into the video and watch it all the way through, and then we'll have some questions at the end. Okay? All right.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is a firefighter. Have a think in your head what a firefighter is. What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary. Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon. He's big and strong. He's got to think about what's on.
Sorry, everyone. Just want to make sure. Is audio okay? And video okay? Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is a firefighter. Have a think in your head what a firefighter looks like. What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary. Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon. He's big and strong. He's got to think about what's on.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Next, we're going to draw a surgeon. Have you thought of a name for your surgeon?
Jim Bob. He's a brain surgeon. I think he would work. He gives you medicine.
That's his ambulance. Okay, next, we're going to draw a fighter pilot.
This is his jet plane. He rescues people. He likes to do stunts in the air and stuff.
Okay, now who would like to meet these people for real? My name's Tamsin and I'm a surgeon in the NHS.
My name's Lauren and I'm a pilot in the Royal Air Force.
My name's Lucy. I'm a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade.
So who wants to know how to do an operation?
Who's better on?
I'm trying my stethoscope.
We'll put this in here. There you go. Now you're a proper fighter pilot.
So into your ears. Can you hear that? Yeah. It's really good. But yeah, it's much better than my kids' one.
What do we all think about that? All right. So we're going to go back into breakouts. And I want you to discuss what roles are gender biased or skewed. Okay. have some conversation about that. And then what stereotypes are assumed with some of the jobs that are gender skewed? What's assumed? And how might we challenge gender-based stereotypes? Okay? Just to have a conversation about it, but I'll come back with some examples, real life examples. But I'd love everyone to have their own conversation about this and to really challenge each other. All right.
All right, welcome back, everyone.
Hello, 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 hello. How are your breakouts? Yeah? Good conversations? All right. Does anybody want to share a little bit of what they spoke about in their breakouts? Oh, you're not all that shy. Gotten to know each other for a whole hour now. Okay, I'll start the conversation and jump in. So I have a client who their business is heavy equipment. I'll leave it at that. And they were working on job descriptions. And in their job description, they had must be able to lift 75 pounds. And when we challenged them a little bit on, so what are your assumptions in who you're looking for? Because what they shared with me is we try to hire women, but we just can't find them. So what assumptions? And I asked my client, what assumptions are you making? Well, 75 pounds, they have to be able to lift 75 pounds. And I said, oh, so first off, I know a lot of women that can lift 75 pounds. I know a lot of men that cannot lift 75 pounds. And oh, by the way, you use equipment to lift. You have never, in the time that I walk the floors, nobody is just standing there trying to lift 75 pounds. They have assistance. So what assumption are you making in that role? You're making the assumption that only men that can lift 75 pounds can be considered for this role. And by example, and then ultimately the outcome is, well, we try to hire women, but. So that stereotype of a mechanic or of someone who is working that floor with heavy equipment, the assumption or stereotype is only men, only strong men, and basically anybody else, sorry. So I asked them to challenge that idea. I asked them to challenge it because once you start to dig a little further in those assumptions, all of a sudden the job description needs to be looked at differently. Because they've only, in a male-dominated industry, they've only ever had men. And to bring women in or to bring others in, they feel that, well, we're changing what we do. You're not. Everybody that you have on the floor right now has assistance in everything that they lift. Nobody lifts 75 pounds. So take that out of your job description and work on the skill sets that are needed and required. Any other thoughts, any other ideas in terms of what you talked about in your breakout rooms? Any other examples? Oopsie, going too far here. No? Oh, Sandra, hello.
I'll just share quickly. I had an experience like this at an earlier job. where my boss told me there was something to, an opportunity to speak at a conference, and I wanted to do it. It was part of my role. And he said to me, yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this. You're soft spoken, you're female, and you're petite.
Oh my God. Trifecta.
Yeah. And it still bothers me. It was so long ago. It was still
capable of even living in this environment, in this world. My goodness. What was your response at the time?
I guess I just believed him.
Yeah.
He was my boss. He was successful. To his credit, he trained me to do that very thing. And I ended up being extremely successful. And he was grateful to me because I helped him. But I reflect on it now so much later, and I'm like, why does it bother me so much? Because if he had only told me I was soft spoken, which was true, and I needed to learn how to use my voice, I wouldn't have felt so much like it was a big obstacle. Like you said, it's a trifecta. If I feel like I have three big things against me, and I believe in him, well, then I feel like, oh, I really can't do this. And it's just not true.
Thank you for sharing that, Sandra. That's exactly what happens, right? Somebody has a picture in their head as to who is the right person for this job. It's not based on facts. Yeah. It's not based on a skill set that can be learned. I promise you, I started my career as an analyst. And I had a boss at the time, thankfully, that literally pushed me in front of an audience and in front of senior management. And I had to learn to speak up. I had to learn to take space. I had to learn. But the reality is there's so much out there right now that is still the stereotyping of a woman can't do this. A person of color wouldn't feel comfortable doing this. A transgender person wouldn't feel comfortable doing. We make a lot of assumptions on behalf of people that we know very little about. So the objective of this exercise, even though we showed it as young people, we could show it as older people as well and still give them a list of roles, and they would still come back with, well, that's more of a male job. That's more of a female job. That's more of a this. The takeaway for all of us today is to literally challenge our assumptions. Ask the question, why do we feel that only this person, even catch ourselves? We used to say firemen, and now we say firefighters. We used to say stewardesses, and now we say flight attendants. So we are changing our language, and there's a reason why we have to change our language, because again, assumptions were made and continue to be made. So we have to constantly challenge those assumptions, challenge our language. I personally, not necessarily as a stereotype, but I have to watch my language. I still introduce, like when I talk to a group of people, hey guys, what are we doing? I still have to check myself. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Why is my assumption that it's a group? And it's not even, I don't assume that they're all men, but my language would suggest otherwise. So again, the objective here and the objective for today's session, let's be aware and let's check some of our assumptions. Okay, so accept that we all have unconscious biases. We just do. We grow up in society, we grow up with media, we grow up in our households. We have unconscious biases. Bias is part of being human, but we have to acknowledge that. And so again, the objective of today is just, let's take a step back every now and then. Let's take a step back and ask that question of ourselves. Make considered decisions. So Unintentional bias is more likely when you make fast decisions, right? You got to get a job done. You're assuming that a woman on your team would not want to go out for drinks with the team because they have to get home to their kids. We never have any women come out to our after work parties. Have you ever invited them? Is everybody invited? Do they know? Does it have to be at a bar? Well, I would invite, people of other religions, but I know not everybody drinks. Okay. Does it have to be at a bar? Could it be at a pool hall? The latest thing are these axe throwing get-togethers. Scare the heck out of me, but there's lots of different ways that you can get together as a team. So again, check your assumptions. And when you're making a quick decision, you sometimes fall into that bias. Monitor your own behavior. Question your first impressions. When somebody walks into a room, what are you already assuming about them that you don't actually know? Right? Our brains work faster than sometimes the way that we talk. So we're like, oh, okay, that person looks like this, acts like this, they're this. Well, let's challenge ourselves a little bit, especially on first impressions. Let's ask some questions. Let's be a little bit more objective. Pay attention to bias related to protective characteristics. So specifically, as we think about things around age, disability, sex, maternity status, race, religion, it's actually illegal to discriminate based on any of these protected characteristics. So again, check your assumptions. I mentioned this before, widen your own social circle. I have an exercise in another session where I ask everybody to write down 5 people that you consider very close to you, and then mark an X for, what religion are they? What race are they? What culture are they? What school do they go to? And typically what happens is that you find 5 people that almost look exactly like you, that have same education background as you do. You have nobody in your inner circle with a disability. You have nobody in your inner circle that speaks a different language. To build your cultural competence and to lead to better understanding, expand your social circle, right? Avoid making assumptions or relying on gut instinct. Again, we all fall into that. We all fall into it. So this is not a, don't you do this, we all fall into it. The objective here is to be aware. But I want you all to think, coming out of this session, to take it one step further, not just be aware, but speak out if you notice bias. I'm going to share a quick story. During the pandemic, when everybody was lining up to cash out at the grocery store and at Loblaws, you couldn't line up in front of each of the cash registers anymore. You had to be in one long lineup, usually the length of the store, and it was completely different than anything we're used to. So people are lining up, there's some signs, but it's still not clear. People are walking up aisles and they don't know where to get into the lineup to cash out. There was a young mother with her son, I'm assuming it's her son, with a young boy. They were people of color, and they were clearly confused as to where to go. There was a woman, an older woman. She was Caucasian. And I know it was a frustrating time for everybody, but literally she yelled, "Can't you people read? Can't you people read?" So I was standing in line, had my mask on and everything else. And I just asked the question very sternly, "Who you people?" Who are you referring to? And in that moment, she realized, I could just tell by her eyes, because of course you can't see the whole face, but somewhat apologetic, but realizing what had come out of her mouth. Speak up if you notice bias. That's something we can all do. We're not asking you to step in front of a firing line. We're not asking you to put yourself in harm's way, but speak up. We all have privilege. We do. So use that privilege. Support others. And check, again, you have your own biases. We all do. But when you see somebody in a work situation, in a social situation, at the grocery store, use that privilege to speak up. That is how change happens. And I will also share on this last point, apologize if you get it wrong. I'm in the business of DEI. I'm in the business of working with clients, working with organizations, and I get it wrong. I was working for an organization. I had a colleague that introduced themselves with the pronouns them and they. And in the conversation and in my exuberance of talking through this particular meeting, I used the wrong pronouns over and over and over again. Nobody, I was the most senior person in the room at the time. Nobody called me in at the time. Nobody mentioned it. I recognized my error at the end of the meeting. I called that person and I apologized. And I said, I'm so sorry. I will do better next time. And when we had our next meeting, I made sure that I introduced myself, even though everybody knew me, with my pronouns. And I did that so that everybody else felt comfortable being able to use their pronouns in the meeting. And so that not one person would feel like an outlier, but that we can normalize the fact that, you know what, we're not always going to get it right. But when we do realize and we know better, we learn, we do better. All right. All right, that's a lot for a day, isn't it? That is a lot. Holy. Wow. We're towards the end of it. I am going to actually skip over one of our last videos, but I have one last one and no breakouts. I know, you're disappointed. You want another breakout, but no more breakouts. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the actions that we can all take. Okay, so out of all of this, you know, there's lots that you could go on the internet and learn about the definitions, diversity, equity, inclusion. There's lots of, you know, transgender, cis, all of that, all the definitions you can. This is not a scholarly learning session. It is an awareness session. So one of the things I want you to take away are what are the things that you can actually do today, building your own awareness, but also supporting others. Bystander intervention. So I just talked a little bit about that. The act of stepping in and correcting in the moment when a person of lower status is interrupted, talked over, disregarded, or ignored. I'm sure we've all been in meetings, in settings, when somebody is talking over somebody else or devaluing them. As a bystander, you can stand up and say, let them finish. They were about to finish their sentence. They didn't finish their thought. Make sure that everybody, again, back to feeling included and inclusion overall. Stand up for someone. Micro affirmations. So that last bystander intervention is when you actually say something. When you're in a meeting or when you're even with your friends and somebody's saying something, just the act of nodding is a micro affirmation. For anybody who's ever presented, who has ever been in front of a group of people, you look for that nod. You look for that positive micro affirmation. And when you're in a meeting or when you're in a classroom setting and somebody makes a point, or when you make a point and somebody else says, yeah, Cheryl, I agree with you. And blah, 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 blah. How does that make you feel? Right? The opposite, again, I've worked for organizations where I go in to present and I see this happening. How does that make you feel? But I've had managers or I've had other people in the past who said, everybody, phones down. We've got a speaker here. Micro affirmations change culture, change the environment, and change the way people feel. Sandra, I'm sure if you were, standing up in front of somebody, even if you were just building your voice, and somebody in the audience said, that's it, Sandra, that's fantastic. Thank you for saying that. How would you feel? Right?
Encouraged.
Exactly. Exactly. Right? All of these little, I call them little things, but they all are multipliers. When you can, be a disruptor. Actually, be the force that makes a change. In my introduction, Alina mentioned that I was the chair of the CEO task force of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility idea. And I even found in organizations, in not-for-profit organizations, not everybody had a voice. So I actually changed the way that we did meetings. And the expectation was that everybody would speak in that meeting. And I changed it to, well, put your thoughts and ideas into chat. You still have a voice. Not everybody's an extrovert. Not everybody feels comfortable being able to speak in front of a group, even if they're their colleagues. But offering a different channel so that people can have another means of feeling included, of sharing their perspectives is really important. I actually even opened up after the meeting to be able to say, here's all the content that we talked about in the meeting. If you have thoughts afterwards, share them. And we'll share them on a SharePoint site. Why? Because not everybody's thinking in the moment to be able to have all of their thoughts put together, to be able to react right away. People take in information differently. So be a disruptor. Change the way meetings are held. Change the way that you're holding meetings. Or when you're having a collection of employees together, give them other channels to be able to share their thoughts and ideas. And don't be upset if nobody says anything. You might have a lot of introverts. That doesn't mean that they're not interested. That doesn't mean that they're not engaged. Just give them other outlets. Last video. Become an ally. Love that term. Everybody talks about it. Ally, ally, ally. I'm an ally. Everybody's an ally. What does it mean to be an ally? Short little video. No breakouts for this one. We can watch it together. And then we'll have a bit of a chat afterwards. All right, here we go.
Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge. Otherwise, someone's going to get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping. It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay. And there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I'm cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you got to know when to zip up the lip up. I don't know. You get what I mean. That's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. And back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last, but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You got to do the work. 1 through 4, 1 through 4. As always, there are links in the video description box to some of the things I mentioned in this video. Imagine your friend is.
All right. I like that video because it's a little entertaining. But the key takeaways are the same. Understand your privilege, understand what privilege means. Listen and do your research. I will share that when in 2020, May 5th, May 25th, when George Floyd was murdered, the number of questions that I got in my building, well, what is Black Lives Matter? And I am so not the internet. I do not have all those answers for you. But if you do your research and then you want to have a conversation, I'm open for it. I'm all about it. But please don't come to people of color, people of different religions, and treat them like the internet. Treat them like Google. Do your own research and then open the door for a conversation. Take action and speak out. I mentioned that already. It's not enough when you're an ally to just say, I'm your ally. I support you. To be a true ally means you're willing to action. You're willing to support and action. You're willing to leverage your privilege to make change. We're going to make mistakes, guaranteed. So what do we do when we make a mistake? apologize, commit to doing better, and move on. Don't live in that mistake. And most importantly, ally is a verb. It is something that we're working on. We all need to work on every day. Every day. It is an action. It is not a noun. All right. We're almost at the very end. I promise you. Almost. Today's takeaways. Justice, equity, equality, and inequality. Remember that little image? I have some resources. We're going to be able to share that with you. What does inclusion look like? Remember I asked you when we went through your first breakout session, did you feel there was inclusion in that breakout? So again, have some takeaways in terms of what does inclusivity look and feel like, so that when you're in groups, when you're with your friends, you're watching and listening. Are people talking over one another? Are people getting cut off? Are people supporting what others are saying? What does inclusivity really look and feel like? Check in our assumptions and privilege. So again, we tend to, we all do it, jump to assumptions, jump to, first impressions. We do hold stereotypes. We all do. But let's take a step back and let's check ourselves a little bit. Let's ask ourselves, is that real? Do we have a fact behind that, or are we assuming? We just talked about it. Become an ally. Be an ally. It's an action. And as I started this full session today, be aware of our own unconscious biases. This will continue our journey to and through the EID space. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you for sharing your evening, this beautiful evening. Get out and enjoy it if you can. But thank you so much for spending the time with me today and just taking the time to learn a little bit more about equity, inclusion, and diversity. And now I will open it up to any questions. And I will stop sharing so that I can see all your lovely faces and or lovely boxes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this, Cheryl. So we're going to open it up for questions. You can either drop in your questions in the chat or unmute and ask away. So lots of thank yous pouring in.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Any questions? Any thoughts?
I did such a great job. Nobody has any questions. I answered all the
You did,
questions.
Cheryl. You're extremely, extremely inspirational. All right. I think there are no questions. So, Cheryl, once again, on behalf of Y-Space and the Markham Small Business Center, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. The knowledge, the information you imparted was extremely, extremely valuable, and I'm sure it was extremely beneficial to all our attendees as well. And you were so inspirational. I'm taking away so much from this workshop, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the attendees that they will do so as well. So once again, thank you so much, Cheryl. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Alina. And good luck to all of you as you're building your businesses, as you go forward in the EDI space. Just recognize that, you know what, we're all on a journey together. We're all learning. Everything is new. But as we learn, we do better. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. And I will be following up with Alina on resources. So definitions, those wonderful images, all of that will be made available. All right.
Amazing. That would be great. All right, to my lovely attendees, thank you for joining the Founder Fundamentals series for today's session and for engaging with us over the last 12 weeks. It was a pleasure hosting you every Tuesday. And like I said at the beginning of the session, even though the Founder Fundamentals program has ended, our support for you has not. We offer idea consultations and so many amazing programs to help you as you continue to grow and build your business. So please do stay in touch. With that, I bid you farewell. Good evening, everyone.